Thailand to welcome you to this beautiful city.
Thank you very much, Professor Morgan. My name is Abhishek Pradeshan. I am a cardiologist working at Bangkok, Chiang Mai Hospital. Far from here to the north. I arrived at 2 a.m. this morning, so if my lecture this morning is beyond the time, so please forgive me. I have not finished my slide yet, so I'd like to welcome Professor Trevor Morgan. We met each other several times also. I'd like to welcome Professor Kruger, Unger, and Select. And I'd like to welcome all you scholars here to this summer school. The purpose of this summer school has already been mentioned by Professor Morgan, and I know that you will feel a little bit worried about what we are going to have today, but don't worry. I guarantee that there will be a really pleasant one, and I hope that Thailand will give you an opportunity to relax and learn, and you will learn something from the culture here. We prepare some special events. Suppose it will be on Thursday. I have not get the detail from Dr. Edward yet. I hope that his wife will be fine. This is his first child, so let's wish him and his family well. And I can see that you are now quite relaxed. So Thailand is the country that you can relax, not worry much. And be careful when you're walking around. It's quite too hot out there, so please stay here until the end of the program. And I hope that everybody will be happy here. If there's something that I can do for you, like I can modify some environment of the hotel or anything that you feel uncomfortable, please don't hesitate to tell me. All right? Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. I wish you a good stay here until Friday. And some of you may have a short holiday here to Thailand. It's a really good idea. So I wish you all happiness and joy in terms of coming to Thailand and enjoy this summer school. Thank you.
I thought we have a reasonable amount of time before the formal procedures start, which we want to take a group photograph, which we'll do in a few moments. But before that, I think it would be a good idea if we go around the room in turn and everyone stands up. You don't need a microphone. Stand up and tell everyone who you are. And the format should be something like I will say to myself, and then I'll give it to Thomas. Trevor Morgan from the Asian Pacific Society of Hypertension, Melbourne, Australia, trained as a nephrologist. Thomas, would you like?
Well, my name is Thomas Unger, but you can pronounce it the way you want, Unger or Unger. Or in Asia, they always say Dr. Thomas to me, so that's easier. I come originally from Germany, and then I spent the last 5 years in Holland, in the Netherlands, in Maastricht, beautiful city with a huge university, and I was then directing the Center for Cardiovascular Research there. And now I'm in a way retired, but you know what retirement is. You're always busy doing things like this. So I'm looking forward to the week with you.
I'm Dr. Yu Qingzhang from Beijing Fuwai Hospital. I'm a cardiologist. I work in the field of hypertension for about 20 years. I'll be very happy to stay with you for the next few days in the summer school.
Daisuke Nakano from Japan, Kagawa University. Do you know Kagawa? Maybe no. It's second largest. I'm a pharmacologist, so I don't have any specific organ, but I'm mainly focusing on kidney. So what I'm going to talk is about something from kidney viewpoint. Okay. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Trevor, how much time do I have?
I've got the button on. Tell him to shut up in a moment. You've already given up your time.
Nice to meet you all. My name is Marcus Wright. I'm a nephrologist. I'm a dominant chair in clinical research at the University of Western Australia in Perth. Big interest in hypertension, sympathetic nervous system to interact with a lot of bright young minds. So looking forward to the meeting.
Hello, I'm Ranho, cardiologist from Seoul, Korea. Good to see you all, and let's have a great time here. Thank you.
I'm Jiro Sato from Japan, and I have a pharmacist license in Japan, but I usually work as a university teacher in the medical university, and I'm involved in the Ohasama study, which is famous for home blood pressure measurement, and I'm epidemiologist. Thank you.
I am Pankaj Khanda. I am Indian but settled in Singapore for past many years. My area of practice is internal medicine, vascular medicine, and hypertension. I'm looking forward to interactions with you guys the next few days. Thank you.
Morning everyone, I'm Rohan Clear from South Africa. I'm a professor of physiology. I'm also representing the new investigates committee of the International Society of Hypertension.
Ruan's representing the new investigating committee of the International Society of Hypertension, of which there'll be more details later, but this is a very important avenue that many of you can get involvement with this international society.
Hello, hi. I'm Nur Ain Azizan, currently a PhD student from University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. My background is dietetic and nutrition, so looking forward to spending good time with you all.
Hello, Mabuhay. I am Charles Flores Viva, and I just finished my fellowship training in nephrology in Philippine General Hospital.
Hi, I am Nazar Muhammad Zabadi from Malaysia. I am a PhD student. My area of interest in hypertension and also epidemiology. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Arnold Mina from the Philippines. I work with the Philippine Society of Hypertension. I'm with the Southern Luzon Working Group. I look forward to interacting with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Xiao Lu from the Third Shanghai Hospital from China. I'm also a visiting assistant researcher in King's College London, and it's really a great chance for me to come here and study with you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Wei Song. I come from north of China, and I cherish this opportunity to study here, and hope all of us have a great time here. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Liu Kai. I'm from China. I'm a cardiologist in West China Hospital, and this is my first time in Thailand. And I'm very honored to be here to attend the summer school and share the knowledge with everyone. And like the professor said, Thailand is a relaxed place, but the presentation makes me a little so I hope I share my presentation with all of us. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Yang Wang. I'm from Xi'an Jiaotong University, first affiliate hospital of Xi'an Jiaotong University, and it also is my first time to come Thailand, but I think it's a hostel place, and I will just enjoy this chance to share my ideas about hypertension, and my research is also about hypertension, and but I'm a clinician, and I will do my best to contribute to this area. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Yi Bangchen from China, and I'm from the Shanghai Institute of Hypertension. And my research field is the calcium and phosphate hormones involved in the cardiovascular systems. And I'm honored to be here and to meet my old friends and my new friends. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Institute of Architects.
Good morning, everyone. I am Virat Kositanovic from Thailand. I think already finished enrolling in cardiology last month.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Chawarin Chokunapha. I come from Thailand. I work at Sirat Hospital, Department of Hypertension, Mahidol University. And today I'm just very excited. Nice to meet you and I welcome everyone to Thailand. Please happy also.
Hello everyone, my name is Ulanati Tatsuwan. I come from Sirat Hospital, also as Dr. Chawarin. Wish everyone would have a good time in Thailand and I am so excited to present to you in your first day. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Titina Wanguriyawong. I think I probably the only geriatrician in here. So the topic I assigned to talk is about the age effect on treatment guidelines. So welcome all of you to Thailand. I'm also from the same hospital as Dr. Sholi and Dr. Nice to meet you all.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mana Konvenan. I'm an endocrinologist from Kamogutta Hospital. I'm from Thailand. Nice to meet you all.
Everyone, my name is Dr. Kamban Tong, or you can call me James, for easier communication. And I'm from the Royal Thai Air Force Hospital and trained nephrologist.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am Nimari Hustrini. I am from Indonesia. I'm a nephrologist. I'm working in Ciptomangun Kusuma Hospital in Jakarta. Nice to meeting you all. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sally. I'm from Indonesia, from the University of Indonesia, and I'm a cardiologist working in National Heart Center, Pagita. I'm very interested in hypertension, and my daily basis I'm working in cardiac imaging, and I'm looking forward to this interesting topic. Thank you.
My name is Johnson. I'm a trained acute medic and intensivist from London, but I currently work in Singapore in the National University Hospital, where I'm one of the clinical directors for the acute medical field.
Hello everyone. My name is Bakirtin. I'm from Mongolia, and I'm working as a cardiologist from National University Hospital.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Abhishek from King George's Medical University, India. I'm basically a diabetologist and endocrinologist. I'm looking forward to this wonderful opportunity of learning with you all in Thailand.
Good morning everyone, nice to meet you. My name is Huang from the University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Vietnam. I see that I seem to be the young generation in this conference, so I hope to have receive experience from professors and friends in other countries. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Long Dong. Yeah, I come from Vietnam and I'm now a cardiologist. And my area is hypertension and interventional cardiology. I'm now a lecturer from the University of Medicine and Pharmacy. Yeah, and I hope we have some time here. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Good morning, everyone, especially to the expert panel. I'm Navin, actually from the Department of Family Medicine, University of Malaysia. So I'm from the lovely country of Malaysia, which is a neighbor of Thailand. So this is my second trip to Thailand. The first trip was when I newly graduated as a doctor. That was 14 years ago. So I look to a grateful experience in sharing with you my experiences in research and also to learn from you, the great experts in area of research. Thank you.
Now, having done that, none of you will remember a single thing. So the important thing is to see what anyone is by their name tag. I do have one other question. At the end of the meeting, we have a very important thing, which is an evaluation of the course. We want to do this online if we can, rather than on paper. And I want to know, do most people have a telephone that they can answer a questionnaire online or not? How many people do not have a facility to answer online? So most of you do. All right. So now we do want to try to get a group photograph, but I'm not certain there's any good facility proper. But we'll go outside and see what we can do. And then we're due to start back in here at 9:40. We're going quite well for time at the moment, but you never know what will happen.
Do you need any special food, special okay, everything is okay. All right, good.
Yeah, it was 14 hours, but it was pleasant.
是啊，我感觉其实我很难发出。
We're really right on time. I already mentioned a little bit about the format and the importance of keeping to time, but I also want to emphasise that what will happen is at the end of each of the scholars' talk, there is an expert panel which will come out front. That's why the people on it know which ones they are, or it's listed in the program, if you've read the program, come out the front. And they are there to give expert commentary if it's needed, but it's very important, and I as chairman will take questions in general from the floor, from the scholars first, rather than getting comments. But there may be certain comments that the expert panel make which might be that they disagree with what the president has said, and that's important for that to come forward. I would also emphasise that when these statements are being made, it's actually no criticism of the individual that they've got it wrong or anything of that nature, because on all these matters there are different opinions that can exist. I have on a couple of issues completely different opinions. I know to at least two members of the expert panel who are here, but they can argue their case, I can argue my case. Now, having said that, Ruan, you're chairing the session now. I will keep my own time, but you should keep it as well. So if I can get it to introduce me.
Thank you, Professor Trevor. So Professor Trevor Morgan will present to us the worldwide importance of hypertension and its impact on world health and medical economics.
Thank you very much. Now, high blood pressure is a very important entity, and I should have checked this before, and it has many importance. As we always have to do these days, I have no conflicts of interest on this matter. the first question is, what is hypertension? And the initial definition used to be it was 100 plus your age when I was young. This is clearly wrong. It may be usual, but it's not normal. Then it became a definition of 160 over 90, more recently 140 over 90. But it should be noted that these are blood pressure levels to treat. They are not really a definition of hypertension. More recently, we have evolved further, and whilst the guidelines use different words, the two things I'd emphasise here, systolic blood pressure is emphasised these days because we're talking primarily about older people. And then we have ideal blood pressure, and the ideal blood pressure is probably less than 115 over 75. In the elderly, systolic blood pressure is by far the most important value, but in the young, the diastolic blood pressure may be just as important. Now, the reason for talking about this is because when we look at the morbidity and mortality, we find that even with a blood pressure we would call normal, there's a greater morbidity and mortality compared to 120 over 80. And in actual fact, most of the deaths from cardiovascular disease occur in people with these levels, not in people with high elevated blood pressure. And if we follow the conventional pattern, the treatment model, most people at this level would not be treated. As I've mentioned, the greatest number of events, however, come from this group. Even though the incidence is much lower, there are so many more people in these groups that we need to do something about them. Now, at the individual level, these elevations of blood pressure, whilst we're not treating, do have a very important effect on outcome. And the slide I'm showing next is so old, it's on an ordinary glass slide that's 35 millimetre from the Metropolitan Life Insurance Study. And it shows the outcome, the reduction in lifespan in a male age 35 with minor elevations of blood pressure. And you can see 140 over 95 has a 20% reduction in lifespan in these type of people. And seeing that person who followed the guidelines, that person would not be treated unless he had other risk factors. If you compare at age 35, 130 over 90, if you compare it to 120 over 80, 130 over 90, something we would probably ignore, is a 10% reduction in years of life. 20% reduction is 5 years reduction of life. A bit higher, 140 over 95, a 10-year reduction in life. 150 over 100, 20 years reduction in lifespan. So all I'm saying, these minor elevations of blood pressure do have an important effect overall on the individual health. Now, not on every individual, these are statistical measures. And it's actually been shown in a complicated article in the JMA in 2012 that if you maintain a person risk factor free, you can end up projecting that they maintain benefit all the time. Whilst once you develop risk factors, you have lost the benefit of being free. Now, it should be noted, as you all know, you've seen this slide, that hypertension around the world, whether it's in developed or developing countries, and whether it's morbidity and mortality, whether it's days of life loss, hypertension or cardiovascular disease is the most important cause. And if we look at different countries and regions around the world, we find that cardiovascular disease is a very important cause of disability as well. Then it's probably worthwhile coming away from that for a moment to talk about who we are in the Asian Pacific region. First of all, we have the three of the most populous countries in the world. Then we have 7 countries greater than 50 million, including a number over 100 million. The smaller ones like Australia, Malaysia, Nepal and Taiwan, and then the very small countries. And not only do we have major differences in population, we also have extraordinary differences in per capita income. And the difference in per capita income can vary 100-fold. Australia, when this slide was made, was a very wealthy country. Our dollar has since gone down and we're not quite as wealthy as we used to be. But this also means that there's a marked difference in health expenditure. Australia and these are high, and then we come down the list to ones where the other countries are less than $300 in total health expenditure, and we then have ones where the total health expenditure is less than $60 per person a year. These are in US dollars, and this $60 is not enough to provide even the most basic medical care. So we do then have a challenge that faces the developing nations in this area, and that is how to spend the money to achieve the greatest health benefit. Now, it may be, you see, that when a country is developing, it is more important to provide sanitation, water, rather than any aspects of health care. But then the problem that occurs in the transition. Early on, as countries develop, there is no hypertension, no stroke, no myocardial infarction. Then as they move towards what used to be called Western civilization, severe hypertension develops with hemorrhagic strokes and acute cardiac failure. Some treatment starts and you change to ischemic strokes and myocardial infarction, and with good treatment, you end up with chronic heart failure, chronic renal disease. And this is very, very expensive. In the no hypertension, no stroke, this occurs in hunter-gatherer countries, and no country in Asia is any longer in this region. But then the problem occurs of some money and some development. There is no or little money, there is little health care. Provision of food, water and shelter is more important. The major financial and social problem is to the individual and the family, and if complications develop, they are the people who develop a problem. And some of the countries, in a way, in this group are indicated. Then you end up getting a bit more money in a country. And then you have the real problem of acute care versus preventive care, short-term treatment versus long-term treatment. And governments, I'll tell you, have very difficult decisions to make, which we as doctors need to influence these decisions in what we believe is a correct measure. Now, initially, probably money goes towards alleviating the acute problem, partly because that's got short-term benefit. So money is spent on treating stroke, treating people, which in some ways is not a very good investment. It goes initially to the acute problem, unless there are very intelligent government policies. In practice, preventive medicine is not funded. But I will emphasize in Asia, a number of the countries in Asia really do have good preventive programs being developed. Then you develop a developed economy, and individual care now becomes very expensive, and in the long run cannot be afforded by governments unless there is a very efficient health system. We reduce myocardial infarct to only to have a more expensive problem, heart failure. We end up with chronic renal failure, very expensive to treat, and also dementia. In the USA, the cost of high blood pressure care alone at $362 a year is more than the total expenditure on the total health budget of many countries. No developing country can afford this expenditure, and even the USA probably can't. But the question is, how can we prevent the cardiovascular epidemic that occurs? Now, a whole lot of things are important in this, but if we look at the Venn diagram, blood pressure occupies the greatest amount of space, the one include. Now, cardiovascular populations, at a population level, you can classify them in a similar way to how we classify individuals. We can develop risk factors for these, and some of these risk factors are emphasized, and all of them are important and all need to be managed. So what I will be talking about is, and a lot of this is sodium and potassium intake. Now, what can we do? We really can develop, in my view, two strategies. We can screen the population and institute treatment as soon as blood pressure goes up. But there are a number of problems if we do this that need to be answered. And more importantly, this does not prevent the problem, as 50% at least of people at risk would not be treated because they do not reach the treatment guidelines. So I believe we need to talk about primary prevention. And the answer on this, primary prevention, do we identify people at risk? risk, or do we do it population rise? Well, we can identify people at risk by family history, genetic screening, phenotype testing. Genetic screening has always been thought to be a great promise, but has yet not delivered in this area. However, what should be emphasized, as the population ages, 75% of the population develop a level of blood pressure that increases their morbidity and mortality. So I believe population-wide strategies are needed, not only to reduce blood pressure, but also importantly to reduce other risk factors. So what I will emphasise, some of what I've mentioned here will be covered by people speaking in the rest of this theme. And what I would end up saying to you, though you probably won't have enough money to get there at this stage, but the Asian Pacific Society of Hypertension meets in Brisbane in November this year. And then I hope that you keep in mind these other meetings. The International Society meeting in Glasgow, together with the European Society in May 2020. The APS meeting in Hyderabad in India in February 2021. And the ISH and APSH meeting again in Kyoto in 2022. And Ruan, I think I'm on time. Maybe too short. Thank you.